When it comes to overcoming anxiety, overcoming depression, my sense is that there are some strategies that might be fairly universal that will kind of be effective for everybody, men, women, and people of all different colors and classes and every difference possible. And then, of course, there will be many strategies that are much more uniquely tailored to specific individuals because, of course, specific types of individuals face different challenges in the world. And so I'm curious if you might kind of have anything come to mind, whether it relates to anxiety or depression, that you find are kind of universal that work for almost everybody, and then some that you find to be uniquely tailored to certain groups of people.
Absolutely. And so generally, the first thing when someone comes into my office and says that they're suffering from depression or anxiety, I am aware that there are a lot of medical mirrors to mental illness. And so I first want to just make sure that they've seen a doctor within the last year, that there's nothing wrong with their thyroid or any other, diabetes. All these things can mirror depression and anxiety. And so
Mm,
that's the first one across the board. Everyone should be, going to their primary care physician regularly and getting checked out. And then when I think about anxiety separately, I also want to assess for if this is related to any trauma response. I think this is something that people often overlook, and they only notice the anxious response and don't understand if it's related to a trigger or a trauma. And so I do a thorough assessment of that. And I want people to be aware of that because treating the anxiety alone without treating the trauma is kind of like putting a band-aid,
mm,
on a gaping wound that needs
mm.
stitches. And so I do a lot of assessment. But generally, some of the things that I think really work for both are a lot of grounding techniques.
A lot of grounding techniques, you
Yeah,
said?
yes,
Mm,
grounding techniques. And so there are an array of them available online that you can look up. But taking time to ground yourself and recognize your overall bodily response to being grounded and present is really helpful. Meditative practices are really helpful with anxiety and depression, and reducing some of the distress that you feel.
mm.
And
What's one, not to interrupt you, but I'm just curious, what's one of your personal favorite or most effective grounding techniques for
oh, my
yourself?
one of my favorite ones is the noticing five, using your five senses
Mm,
and picking out different things in the room and being aware of those things. And that is something that you can do fairly, where people aren't able to notice that you're doing it, right? And
mm,
so I can sit in a chair and really be here with you and talking, but then I'm present that I am seeing, you are sitting behind a screen and I feel cool air and I feel the pressure of my chair and, all the other senses and just grounding myself in the
mm,
present when I am becoming distressed.
mm,
So another technique that I often implore people to use is the stop technique, which is when you're ruminating about something. Um, this is more of a brain exercise where you tell yourself to stop thinking about something. And I usually ask people to practice it, saying it out loud first. And so if you're worrying about something and you go down that rabbit hole of like worrying about what if I'm in a car accident and then what will happen to my family and then right and so you're going down this rabbit hole. I tell people to give themselves two or three um, worries and then to stop. And as they continue to become more skillful in that, then it's one worry. And then it's identifying the worry and stopping or using a worry tree, right? Is this something that I can do anything about? And that could be yes or no. If it is yes, then you've exhausted all that you could do to help that situation, then
mm.
that's where stop. And if it's not, if it's something completely outside of your control, then you should stop worrying about it
Mhm.
because it's nothing you can, and that is only, distressing you more. And so these really useful, quick layman's tools that you can do on your own and you can research are really helpful.
Mm. And it's, I think the combination of things you've just described perhaps is what works best. Like we can do those thought processes and stop our worries best when we're feeling grounded. It's like those grounding exercises can take the edge off of our distress or anxiety just enough to be clear-headed enough to kind of get a handle on our thoughts. And I just want to highlight what you said too about worrying. And I've heard it be put one way, which is pretty much what you said, but it's like, do you have a problem? Yes or no? And if the answer is yes, the next question is, can you do anything about it? And if the answer is yes to that, then the answer is, well, then why worry? And if the answer is no, I can't do anything about it, then again, the conclusion is, then why worry?
Yeah.
And so it's like when you really like, did you call it the worry tree? Is that what you
Yeah.
said? Yeah,
Yeah.
that maybe this is kind of
Yeah.
what you mean by that. And ultimately it always leads to worrying is actually quite pointless.
Yeah.
And I've heard people defend worrying in interesting ways where they make some valid points by saying, well, maybe, when you worry about something, you're actually kind of foreseeing a real potential threat and you can kind of prevent it from happening. But that's not quite what we mean by this sort of excessive, repetitive worry. It's one thing to foresee danger
Mhm.
and act accordingly and prevent it. And it's another thing to just let your mind spiral out of control with every possible bad thing that could happen.
Right.
It's a
Right.
fine
And
line.
I would argue that if someone believes that they are preventing danger, is that a trauma response? And
Mm,
what? Because why do you need to live your life trying to prevent danger in that way?
mm,
And so then examining what that means for that person and what traumatic response did they not prepare themselves for that occurred that they now feel like they need to plan and worry for all traumatic experiences in the future.
mm,
And so I definitely like to debate this, on a cognitive level with clients, but sometimes it is more of just the physical response of what it feels like to be in that worry. And is that comfortable for you?
mm,
And if it is, then what's comfortable about that feeling? And if it's not, then why do we continue to do it? Because our body is not made to live in that kind of like fight or flight mode consistently for long periods of time. And
right.
so it's really harmful to us to continue to live like that.
Mm.